2024 was one of the most toxic years for Dragon Ball Legends from a PvP meta standpoint. The year was filled with the release of overpowered characters, followed shortly by their counters, creating a never-ending cycle of power creep. Looking back, the start of the year might have been the healthiest PvP has been, thanks to these two. Both were very strong but had noticeable flaws that kept them from being truly oppressive. Of course, one team stood out as particularly strong during this time, but the meta remained balanced. Every character had some sort of counter or weakness that could be exploited, making PvP genuinely fun to play. Now, let's take a look at the different phases we went through. Ultra Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. For some reason, they decided to give this character every broken mechanic in the game, and then add new broken mechanics on top of that. This guy had an AoE green card, endurance, a strike counter, a counter blue card, insane last man standing buffs, and to top it all off, he introduced blast cards that ignored blast armor. Like, what a fuck? And if you thought he was cancerous, oh boy, then they dropped Super 17. This guy didn't care about anything. 2 blast cards, and whatever was in front of him was dead. And for the love of God, if he caught you with his green card, just close the game. His team was just as disgusting. He had access to absurd amounts of Zenkai buffs, which is why the most popular setup was him, as many Zenkai buffs as possible, Red Revival Cell, and a leader slot unit, usually Ultra Gohan or UI. This team completely dominated the game until the anniversary. There were some good releases along the way, like LL Super Vegeta, Ultra Golden Frieza, and LL Super Baby 2, but none of them were strong enough to shift the meta in a meaningful way. Then, the anniversary finally arrived, kicking off the fusions galore. Everyone was expecting some form of Super Vegito, but the reveal of a tag Goku and Vegeta that fused in-game into Vegito was an amazing surprise. It was a unique and well-executed twist that made his release even more special. Plus, he introduced one of the most broken mechanics in the game, Guaranteed Rush. Gogeta Blue was also a welcome addition. Say what you want about his kit and his assault chain, but he was a solid pick to match the hype of releasing alongside Super Vegito and being an anniversary headliner. This might have been the best Part 1 of any Legends anniversary or festival. Part 2, on the other hand, wasn't as good, but it was by no means bad. LL Godku was a character people really wanted, but honestly, I think he should have been released later in the year as an Ultra instead of an LL. LL Ultimate Gohan, on the other hand, was someone I didn't expect at all. He represents a very hype moment in the anime, which sounds fine, but something about him just felt off. Maybe it was his animations, or maybe it was the fact that he was yet another overpowered Gohan, coming right after Ultra Gohan, who had already dominated almost half the year. Evil Buu was also cancerous, as he and Ultimate Gohan started the dumb buff cancellation meta. Though I guess this was their way of countering fusing Super Vegito's insane Guaranteed Rush. And finally, we got my GOAT, the second ever representation of this character in the game. Ultra Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. My glorious Monkey King finally stepped foot into the game. And let me tell you, he was the perfect finisher for this insane anniversary. His animations were flawless. His kit was very strong. His gauge was broken but not as oppressive as some we'll see later, and of course, his ultimate art, the legendary one-shot button. At his prime, nobody could survive it. It was just click it and kill someone. And when paired with fusing Vegito, you basically had 2 guaranteed kills. Also, let's not forget about LL Omega Shenron that we got in the after party. He is also very good, coming with the indestructible mechanic, adding some sort of defensive value to the Fusion Warriors team. that were a full offense, no defense type of team. After that, we entered, for me, the most boring part of the year, the movies campaign. But we need times like these where we free-to-play players can save some CC, skipping these somewhat boring units. For example, LL Broly, who is very hype in my opinion, just wasn't there. Kit-wise, good damage, but very fragile, and had some key issues if I remember correctly. The two Sparkings were both very good at their job. One had very good damage potential and nice AoE green spam. The other was, and maybe still is, one of the best tanks in the game. Legends Limited Triku and Ultra Turles were very good units, created to shift the meta from the oppressive and offensive G4 meta to the defensive and tanky meta. Triku was the first of many yellow units they would proceed to release in order to counter UG4, and he actually did a very good job. Unlike Ultra Janemba, who held back UVB for like 2 weeks before Picon, and Gogeta countered him, these yellows showed the Monkey King no mercy. They were tailored especially with G4's kit in mind, to counter his very existence. After this short movies campaign, we for some dumb reason went back to Majin Buu Saga again. And this is where it went from a boring time to play the game to the most unplayable time to play. It started with Legends Limited Gotenks, who was a fairly good and fun release. He had good offensive and supportive abilities, and had endurance, which was fine since it wasn't accompanied by buff removal. But it just all went south with the release of Ultra Majin Vegeta. To this day, people are trying to defend this guy, saying that Vegeta never had a good character, he deserves it, or some nonsense. But if you were complaining that much because of how broken Ultra Gohan was, then proceed to be happy about UMV, something is wrong here. To start with, this guy had some really good stats. AoE green, blast counter that locks in the enemy, and he also gets a blue card every time. Talk about being spoon-fed. And just to make sure he doesn't get one-shot by fusing SV or UG4, they of course had to give another Majin Buu Saga character buff removal plus endurance. And at last, the 2024 Legends Festival arrived. And, oh boy, if this was a heated festival. In Part 1, we saw Legends Limited Vegito, who transformed in Vegito Blue, and Goku Black, who transformed into Goku Black Rosy. As always, Vegito Blue was crazy. They gave him basically what is a better version of Assault Chain, letting him ignore any type of counter gauge once his gauge was full. Since UMV was still terrorizing the game, this mechanic was really necessary in my opinion. Goku Black, on the other hand, was kinda underwhelming. He is a defensive type of character who was supposed to keep VB in check, blocking his combos, but he failed to do that, and that's how we entered an even worse meta. The 100+ combo meta, at least its beginning phase. Part 2 was straight ass. For some reason, we got another Majin Buu Saga buff, no Zenkais, and possibly the start of the worst meta of the year. The only saving parts of it were Daima Goku and Ultra Super Gogeta, who got a platinum. At this point, everyone was disappointed with the state of the game. Everyone was running the same broken teams, and it was getting to a point where people were calling it the worst festival ever, even without seeing the Part 3. Of course, some were crying to cope, saying that Ultra MUI was going to save the game, or Ultra somebody else will do it. And then the day of the reveals and stuff arrived. That's when Beast Gohan was announced. People were in disbelief. On paper, his kit looked like the most insane and broken thing we have ever seen. Not like it wasn't, but in game, he was actually alright. For the first time, we didn't get a meta-defining premium Gohan. Yeah, Ultra Beast Gohan actually saved DBL. Not that he wasn't insane, but he was what the game needed at the time to fight off those long combo teams. Now that 2024 is over, we can look back and say it wasn't the best year ever for the game. character balancing issues, boring and similar kits, and no new summon animations. I think for me, this year was a 6 out of 10, with the highlight being the 2 fusing characters that brought something new to the game. 2025 has just started, and it seems like they are 2 for 2 on healthy premium releases. And it seems like they stepped up a notch with the animations, so let's see what they'll do going forward.